Brandon Mitchell thought humiliating his pregnant ex-wife Sarah for helping an old woman would impress his mistress Amber. He had no idea that old woman was Dr. Eleanor Price, the billionaire CEO of the very hospital keeping his dying mother alive. Sarah had just caught Brandon cheating 3 weeks ago, lost everything in the divorce, but still stopped to help a stranger having a medical emergency. While Brandon and Amber mocked her pregnant body, her kindness, her broken heart. But what Brandon didn't know was that the nobody his ex-wife helped wasn't nobody at all. She was Dr. Eleanor Price, the woman who personally approved his mother Patricia's experimental cancer treatment, the only treatment keeping her alive. And when Dr. Price discovered that the cruel man from the parking lot was the son of her dying patient, when she saw hospital footage of him treating her staff like garbage, kissing his mistress while his mother sat alone through chemotherapy, she made a decision that would destroy him. But why would a powerful CEO risk her reputation to punish one cruel man? What did Patricia Mitchell do when she discovered her son's cruelty killed her? Where was the mistress Amber when Brandon's perfect life collapsed? And could Sarah, the woman Brandon destroyed, be the only person who could save his dying mother? What happens next will make you believe in karma and break your heart. 3 weeks earlier, Sarah Mitchell stood in the doorway of her own bedroom, 7 months pregnant, watching her husband Brandon tangled in their sheets with Amber Chen, his paralegal from work. The afternoon sunlight streaming through the curtains made everything too bright, too real, too impossible to deny. Sarah's hand went to her swollen belly as if to protect the baby from what she was seeing. Amber didn't even have the decency to look embarrassed. She just smiled. That cruel little smirk that said she'd been waiting for this moment, wanting Sarah to catch them. Brandon scrambled up, his expensive watch still on his wrist, his wedding ring catching the light. "Sarah, I can explain." But Sarah's voice came out steady, cold, like something inside her had already died. "Get out, both of you. This is my house." Her parents had left her this house when they died in a car accident 5 years ago, and Brandon had always resented that it wasn't in his name. Now, she understood why he'd pushed so hard for her to add him to the deed. He'd been planning his exit strategy all along. Amber giggled as she gathered her clothes, actually giggled, and called back over her shoulder, "Don't worry, honey, I'll take good care of him." The door closed behind them, and Sarah sank to the floor, her back against the wall, one hand on her belly where her daughter was kicking, as if the baby could feel her mother's heart breaking into 1,000 pieces. The divorce took 3 weeks. Brandon's lawyers were vicious, calling Sarah emotionally unstable and unfit because she'd cried during the proceedings. They tried to claim the baby might not even be his, even though Sarah had never so much as looked at another man in their 5 years of marriage. Brandon sat there in his $1,000 suit, his face blank, like she was a stranger he'd never loved, never promised forever to, never held at night when she cried about losing her parents. The judge awarded Sarah the house and ordered child support, but Brandon's lawyer was already filing appeals, dragging it out, making sure every penny would be a fight. When it was over, Sarah walked out of that courthouse with her divorce papers and her pregnant belly and nothing else. No job since she'd quit nursing when pregnancy complications started. No family since her parents were gone. No friends, because Brandon had slowly isolated her from everyone over the years. She was 21 weeks alone. Now, 3 weeks after the divorce, Sarah stood in the Whole Foods parking lot, loading groceries into her beat-up Honda Civic, the car she'd had since college that Brandon always made fun of, calling it your poverty mobile. Her back ached from standing too long, and the baby was doing gymnastics against her ribs, making it hard to breathe. She loaded the last bag and was about to get in when she heard a sound, a small gasp, then the scatter of items hitting pavement. She turned to see an elderly woman in a faded cardigan and worn jeans stumbling near a car, grocery bags bursting open, pill bottles rolling in every direction. The woman swayed, her hand reaching out for something to steady herself against, her face pale and confused. Sarah didn't think. She just moved, waddling as fast as her pregnant body would let her, reaching the woman just as her knees started to buckle. "Ma'am? Ma'am, are you okay?" Sarah helped her to the concrete parking block, got her sitting down. The woman's skin was clammy, her breathing shallow. Sarah had been a pediatric nurse before the pregnancy. She knew a medical emergency when she saw one. "I think my blood sugar," the woman whispered, disoriented. "I'm diabetic. I forgot to eat lunch." Sarah immediately dug through her own grocery bag, found the orange juice she'd just bought, twisted it open. "Drink this, slowly, just small sips." She knelt beside the woman on the hot pavement, ignoring how her knees screamed in protest, ignoring how her back seized up, focusing only on this stranger who needed help. She started collecting the scattered medications, diabetes pills, blood pressure medication, heart medication, reading each label to understand what she was dealing with. The woman drank the juice, and slowly, color started coming back to her face. Sarah felt her pulse thready, but getting stronger. "That's it. You're doing great. Just keep breathing." The woman looked at Sarah with these sharp gray eyes that seemed to see right through her, down to her bones, to her broken heart. "Thank you," the woman whispered. Most people would have just walked by. That's when Sarah heard the voice that still haunted her nightmares. "Well, well, well, if it isn't Saint Sarah." She froze, her hand still on the woman's wrist, checking her pulse. She knew that voice. She turned slowly, and there he was, Brandon Mitchell, looking like something out of a magazine in his tailored casual wear, designer sunglasses pushed up on his head, standing next to his brand new Lexus. And wrapped around his arm, like a python, was Amber Chen, wearing a dress that probably cost more than Sarah's monthly grocery budget. Her lipstick perfect, her hair salon fresh, everything about her screaming, "I won." Brandon's smile was cruel, the kind of smile that enjoyed causing pain. "Still playing Mother Teresa? That's why you're alone and fat, Sarah. Nobody wants a saint who can't even keep her husband." The words hit Sarah like physical blows. People in the parking lot were stopping, staring, their faces a mixture of pity and discomfort. She felt her face burning with humiliation, felt tears starting to well up, but she refused to move from the elderly woman's side. She wouldn't give him that. Amber pulled out her phone and started filming, actually filming this moment, her laugh high and sharp like breaking glass. "Oh my God. This is gold. Look at her, babe. So pathetic. Helping random street trash while she's about to pop." Amber touched Brandon's chest possessively, that same gesture Sarah had seen in her bedroom 3 weeks ago. "Babe, we're late for your mom's treatment appointment at the hospital. Let's leave the charity case to her sad little life." She said it loud enough for everyone to hear, making sure Sarah knew exactly where they were going, rubbing salt in every wound. Brandon smirked, enjoying this, feeding off Sarah's pain like it gave him power. "You're right, babe. Come on." But then he paused, turned back to Sarah one more time, and delivered the final cut. "By the way, Sarah, don't expect child support. My lawyers are already working on proving that baby isn't mine. Good luck raising it alone." His eyes traveled down to her pregnant belly with disgust, like she was something dirty he needed to scrape off his shoe. They walked away, Amber's laughter echoing across the parking lot, and Sarah stood there, frozen, one hand protectively on her belly, tears streaming down her face, while strangers whispered and pointed. The humiliation was suffocating, crushing, making her want to disappear into the pavement. But then she felt a hand take hers, thin, papery, surprisingly strong. The elderly woman was looking up at her with fierce eyes, eyes that suddenly didn't look helpless at all. "Don't you dare let them break you, child," the woman said quietly. "You have something they'll never have." Sarah's voice came out broken. "What's that?" "A soul." The word hung in the air between them, simple and devastating. Sarah helped the woman to her feet, walked her to her car, made sure she was stable enough to drive, got her phone number, just to check on you later. The woman squeezed Sarah's hand before getting in her car. What's your name, dear? Sarah. Sarah Mitchell. I'm Eleanor. Eleanor Price. The name meant nothing to Sarah then. She just nodded, gave a sad smile, and watched the woman drive away. Then Sarah got in her own car, gripped the steering wheel with both hands, and let herself fall apart in a way she hadn't allowed herself to since the divorce. She sobbed until her throat was raw, until the baby kicked in protest, until she had no tears left. And she made herself a promise she would survive this. For her daughter, she had to. What Sarah didn't know, couldn't possibly know, was that Eleanor Price sat in her car 3 spaces away, not driving anywhere, watching Sarah cry through her rearview mirror. And Eleanor was making a promise too. She pulled out her phone and dialed a number. James, this is Dr. Price. I need you to pull security footage from the Whole Foods on Riverside, today's date, approximately 2:30 p.m. I need you to identify a man, mid-30s, expensive suit, blue Lexus, get me everything. His name, his occupation, his address, everything. She paused, her jaw tightening. And James, I need you to cross-reference with our patient database at Mercy Point. I have a feeling. Eleanor hung up and looked at her own hands, still shaking slightly from the low blood sugar episode. She thought about Sarah's gentle touch, the way she'd knelt on hot pavement while 7 months pregnant to help a complete stranger. She thought about that man's cruel smile, his mistress's mocking laughter, the way they'd humiliated a pregnant woman for the crime of being kind. Eleanor Price hadn't built a $2 billion hospital empire by letting cruelty go unpunished. She'd spent 40 years fighting to create a place where human dignity mattered, where compassion was the foundation of healing. And she just watched a man destroy both in 60 seconds. Oh, Brandon, she whispered to herself, you have no idea what you've done. Monday morning arrived cold and gray, the kind of morning that felt like a warning. Doctor, Eleanor Price sat in her corner office on the 15th floor of Mercy Point Medical Center, surrounded by 40 years of achievement awards, from presidents, commendations from medical boards, photographs with senators and celebrities, all of it testament to a life spent building something that mattered. The sunrise painted the city below in shades of gold and shadow, but Eleanor wasn't looking at the view. She was looking at a file on her desk, and what she saw there made her blood run cold with a fury she hadn't felt in decades. Her assistant James had delivered it at 7 a.m. sharp, just like she'd requested. Inside was everything about Brandon Mitchell. His job as a corporate lawyer at Henderson & Associates, his salary of $400,000 a year, his new luxury apartment downtown, his divorce from Sarah Mitchell, finalized 3 weeks ago, photographs of him with Amber Chen at expensive restaurants. But it was the last page that made Eleanor's hands shake. Patient connection found, the report said. Brandon Mitchell, son of Patricia Ann Mitchell, patient ID 847293, enrolled in experimental pancreatic cancer treatment, trial PC40, principal investigator Dr. Eleanor Price. Eleanor closed her eyes and let that information settle into her bones. Patricia Mitchell. She knew that name, knew that patient, stage 4 pancreatic cancer with rare genetic markers that made her eligible for Eleanor's experimental immunotherapy trial, one of only 50 patients in the entire country receiving this treatment. Without it, Patricia Mitchell had 8 to 12 weeks to live. With it, she had a 60% chance of surviving another 5 years. Eleanor had personally reviewed Patricia's application, had personally signed off on her enrollment, had personally believed this woman deserved a chance at life. Now she opened her computer and pulled up something else security footage from Mercy Point's internal cameras. She'd requested it Saturday night, and what she watched made her sick. There was Brandon Mitchell, striding through the oncology ward like he owned the place, snapping his fingers at nurses, dismissing doctors mid-sentence when they tried to explain his mother's treatment schedule. She watched him berate a young nurse named Maria until tears streamed down the girl's face, all because his mother's lunch tray had arrived 5 minutes late. She watched him on his phone during his mother's chemotherapy sessions, laughing with someone, probably Amber, while Patricia sat alone in that chair with poison dripping into her veins. And then Eleanor watched footage from the parking garage that made her decision final. Brandon pressing Amber against his Lexus, kissing her deeply, his hands in her hair, while 3 floors above them, his mother vomited from chemo side effects with only a nurse to hold her hand. Eleanor had seen enough cruelty in her 40 years of medicine to know evil when it stared back at her from a screen. She picked up her phone and dialed her assistant. James, I need Brandon Mitchell in my office tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. Tell him it's about his mother's treatment. Make it sound routine. She hung up before he could respond, then pulled out Patricia Mitchell's file and began to read every detail, every note, every prognosis. This wasn't a decision she would make lightly. This was a woman's life in her hands. Tuesday morning, Brandon Mitchell sat in the elegant waiting room outside Dr. Price's office, checking his Rolex every 30 seconds. He had a meeting at 11 with a client worth millions, and this hospital visit was cutting into his schedule. Amber had texted him 4 times already. She wanted to go ring shopping this weekend, wanted him to propose by Christmas, wanted the kind of wedding that would make her friends jealous. Brandon smiled thinking about it. Life was finally going his way. Sarah was out of the picture, no longer dragging him down with her boring kindness and her simple tastes. Amber was exciting, ambitious, the kind of woman who understood that success meant taking what you wanted without apology. His mother's cancer was responding to treatment. The doctor said she might actually beat this thing. Everything was perfect. The assistant opened the door. Mr. Mitchell, Dr. Price will see you now. Brandon walked in, expecting some routine update about medication schedules or test results. Instead, he found himself facing an elderly woman behind an enormous desk, and something about her was familiar in a way that made his stomach drop. Mr. Mitchell, please sit down. Brandon sat, confused. I'm sorry. Do I know you? I was expecting to meet with Dr. Price about my mother's treatment. I am Dr. Eleanor Price. She turned her computer monitor toward him, and Brandon's world tilted sideways. On the screen was parking lot footage, crystal clear. Him mocking Sarah, Amber filming and laughing, Sarah crying while helping an old woman. And that old woman, Brandon's throat went dry. That old woman was staring back at him from across this massive desk. Tuesday morning, Brandon Mitchell sat in the elegant waiting room outside Dr. Price's office, checking his Rolex every 30 seconds. He had a meeting at 11 with a client worth millions, and this hospital visit was cutting into his schedule. Amber had texted him 4 times already. She wanted to go ring shopping this weekend, wanted him to propose by Christmas, wanted the kind of wedding that would make her friends jealous. Brandon smiled thinking about it. Life was finally going his way. Sarah was out of the picture, no longer dragging him down with her boring kindness and her simple tastes. Amber was exciting, ambitious, the kind of woman who understood that success meant taking what you wanted without apology. His mother's cancer was responding to treatment. The doctor said she might actually beat this thing. Everything was perfect. The assistant opened the door. Mr. Mitchell, Dr. Price will see you now. Brandon walked in expecting some routine update about medication schedules or test results. Instead, he found himself facing an elderly woman behind an enormous desk, and something about her was familiar in a way that made his stomach drop. Mr. Mitchell, please sit down. Brandon sat, confused. I'm sorry, do I know you? I was expecting to meet with Dr. Price about my mother's treatment. I am Dr. Eleanor Price. She turned her computer monitor toward him, and Brandon's world tilted sideways. On the screen was parking lot footage, crystal clear. Him mocking Sarah, Amber filming and laughing, Sarah crying while helping an old woman, And that old woman, Brandon's throat went dry. That old woman was staring back at him from across this massive desk. Doctor Price leaned back in her leather chair, her fingers steepled, her gray eyes harder than diamonds. That was me, Mr. Mitchell. The nobody your ex-wife helped while you and your mistress mocked her pregnant body and her broken heart. That was me. Brandon tried to speak, but no words came out. His brain was scrambling, trying to understand what this meant, trying to calculate damage control, trying to find a way out. Eleanor continued, her voice steady and cold. Your ex-wife, Sarah Mitchell, stopped her entire day to help a dizzy old woman she thought was helpless. She gave me her own orange juice. She checked my pulse. She collected my medications from the pavement while 7 months pregnant. She called me that evening to make sure I was okay. She showed me more human decency in 1 hour than most people show in a lifetime. Eleanor pulled up another screen, this time showing hospital security footage. You, on the other hand, have shown me exactly who you are. I've reviewed your behavior in this hospital, Mr. Mitchell. You've made nurses cry. You've threatened staff members. You've treated everyone here like they're servants who exist only to please you. You've spent your mother's chemotherapy sessions on the phone laughing with your mistress while Patricia suffered alone. Brandon finally found his voice. What does any of this have to do with my mother's treatment? Eleanor's smile was terrible to see. Everything, Mr. Mitchell. Your mother, Patricia, is enrolled in an experimental treatment program that I personally developed and oversee. This program is exclusive to Mercy Point Medical Center. No other facility in the country has access to this protocol. She paused, letting him understand. No other facility can save your mother's life. Brandon's hands gripped the armrests of his chair. What are you saying? I'm saying this program requires participants to meet certain criteria. Medical criteria, yes, which your mother meets perfectly, but also ethical criteria. We choose patients whose families demonstrate the values we wish to promote in healthcare: compassion, respect, human dignity. Eleanor opened Patricia's file and removed a single sheet of paper. Your family no longer meets those criteria, Mr. Mitchell. Your mother's participation in the trial is terminated effective immediately. She'll be transitioned to standard palliative care within 48 hours. The words hit Brandon like bullets. He exploded out of his chair. You can't do that. I'll sue. I'll destroy you. You'll do nothing. Eleanor's voice cut through his rage like a scalpel. I've already consulted with our legal team. Trial participation is at the sole discretion of the principal investigator, me. I have final authority on enrollment and removal. You signed those papers yourself when your mother enrolled. Did you even read them? Or were you too busy on your phone? Brandon's face cycled through emotions, fury, disbelief, panic, desperation. My mother will die without this treatment. Yes, Eleanor said simply, she will. In approximately 8 to 12 weeks, according to our oncologists. And she'll die knowing that her son's cruelty killed her. Brandon slammed his hands on the desk. This is because of my ex-wife? This is her fault. For no, Mr. Mitchell. Eleanor stood now, and despite her small frame, she seemed to tower over him. This is because of you. Your ex-wife demonstrated the very best of humanity. You demonstrated the very worst. I'm not canceling your mother's treatment as punishment. I'm doing it because cruelty has a price, and today you're going to pay it. Brandon left Dr. Price's office like a man walking through a nightmare he couldn't wake up from. His hands shook so badly, he dropped his car keys twice in the parking garage. This couldn't be happening. This couldn't be real. His mother was dying because of a parking lot interaction, because he'd told the truth about Sarah being pathetic, because that old woman turned out to be someone important. It was insane. It was unfair. He pulled out his phone and called his lawyer, then his firm's senior partner, then every connection he had who might know someone with power at Mercy Point Medical Center. Every conversation ended the same way. Dr. Eleanor Price was untouchable. She'd built that hospital from nothing, donated hundreds of millions to research, sat on the boards of every major medical institution in the country. Going after her would be career suicide. And besides, she was legally protected. Trial participation was discretionary. She could remove anyone for any reason. Brandon had signed away his rights to appeal when his mother enrolled. He sat in his Lexus for an hour, paralyzed, his brain refusing to process what came next. Finally, he drove to the hospital, took the elevator to the 7th floor, walked down the too bright hallway to room 743, where his mother had been for the past 6 weeks. Patricia Mitchell sat up in bed when he entered, and Brandon saw immediately that she knew. There was a letter in her hands, already read, already absorbed, and her face held an expression he'd never seen before. Devastation mixed with something that looked almost like hatred. "Mom," he started, but she held up one trembling hand to stop him. "Tell me it's not true," Patricia whispered, her voice hoarse from crying. "Tell me you didn't mock that sweet pregnant girl in a parking lot while she helped someone. Tell me you didn't humiliate her in front of strangers with that awful woman hanging on your arm." Brandon opened his mouth, but nothing came out. What could he say? Patricia's face crumbled. Oh God, Brandon, what did I do to you? What did I teach you? Mom, this isn't about I'm dying because you're cruel. Patricia's shout echoed in the small room, raw and desperate. I'm dying because you treated kindness like it was weakness and cruelty like it was strength. I'm dying because I raised a monster and I didn't even see it until it killed me. She was sobbing now, ugly, painful sobs that shook her frail body. I told you Sarah was too soft. I told you that you deserved better, someone ambitious like that paralegal. I pushed you toward this because I thought being ruthless meant being successful. But Sarah was good, Brandon. She was good. And I taught you that goodness was something to mock. Brandon felt panic rising in his chest. I can fix this. Sarah just needs to talk to Dr. Price. Explain that Sarah owes you nothing, Patricia screamed, with a strength that seemed impossible from her dying body. That girl is carrying your child and you called her fat. You humiliated her while she was pregnant with your baby. You denied your own child. Her hands clutched the letter, crumpling it. If I were her, I'd watch you burn and smile while I did it. Brandon stared at his mother, seeing a stranger. So you're just giving up? You're going to let this woman kill you because of you, Brandon? Because you never learned that actions have consequences. Because I spoiled you, protected you, told you that you deserved whatever you wanted without earning it. Patricia turned to look out the window, tears streaming down her hollow cheeks. I made you into this, and now I'll die knowing what I created. That's my punishment. Death is yours. Brandon tried everything. He begged his mother to fight. He called every doctor he could find. He tried to transfer Patricia to other hospitals, but the cancer was too advanced. No one else would take her without the experimental treatment, and no one else had access to it. He hired 3 different law firms, but they all said the same thing. He was powerless. And as the days passed, as his mother grew weaker and weaker, something else started happening. Amber stopped answering his calls. When he finally cornered her at a coffee shop, she looked at him with cold calculation. I'm not signing up to be married to a broke man with a dead mother and a reputation for cruelty, Brandon. I have options. She handed him back the promise ring he'd bought her 3 weeks ago. It was fun while it lasted, and just like that, she was gone. At midnight on the 9th day after Dr. Price canceled the treatment, Brandon found himself standing outside Sarah's apartment, his suit wrinkled, his face unshaven, everything he'd built crumbling around him. He knocked, then pounded when she didn't answer. Finally, the door opened, and there she was, Sarah, still pregnant, still beautiful in a way that had nothing to do with makeup or expensive clothes, looking at him with eyes that held no anger, only exhaustion. Sarah, please, I need your help. She started to close the door. He caught it, desperate. My mother is dying. That woman you helped, she's the CEO. She canceled my mom's treatment because of what happened. You have to talk to her. Tell her I'm not. Tell her what, Brandon? Sarah's voice was quiet, deadly calm. That you're not the man who cheated on me? Not the man who mocked me in public while I was pregnant? Not the man who denied our daughter exists? Brandon sank to his knees right there in her doorway. Please, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'll come back. We can be a family. I'll be a good father. Just please, talk to Dr. Price. Ask her to, now you want to be a family? Sarah's voice broke. Now that you need something from me? Your mother told you I wasn't good enough, Brandon. She celebrated when you left me. She picked Amber over me. And you destroyed me. You took everything I had and crushed it. Brandon grabbed at her hands, but she pulled away like his touch burned. Your mother is dying because of your choices. Not mine, yours. 2 days later, Sarah sat across from Dr. Eleanor Price in that same corner office where Brandon's world had ended. Eleanor had called her personally, asked her to visit, and Sarah had come because she was curious about the woman she'd helped, the woman who'd somehow ended up holding Brandon's life in her hands. Eleanor explained everything, the canceled treatment, Brandon's begging, Patricia's devastation. When she finished, Sarah was quiet for a long time. Then she said something that made Eleanor's eyes shine with emotion. Can you restore the treatment? Eleanor studied her carefully. I could, but why would you want me to? Because Patricia Mitchell shouldn't die for her son's sins. Sarah's hand rested on her belly where her daughter was kicking. She made mistakes. She wasn't kind to me, but she doesn't deserve this. Eleanor leaned forward. Sarah, your mercy humbles me, but no, some lessons cost everything. Brandon Mitchell needs to understand that cruelty has consequences that can't be fixed with apologies or money or begging. Patricia raised the man who destroyed you. She celebrated his cruelty. She chose his mistress over his pregnant wife. This is where it ends. Sarah nodded slowly, understanding something profound. As she stood to leave, Eleanor said, when your baby is born, call me. I have a position in our pediatric nursing program. Full benefits, daycare on site. And Sarah, your daughter will be lucky to have you as a mother. Patricia Mitchell died 3 weeks later on a Tuesday morning with only nurses present. Brandon didn't come to the funeral. He couldn't afford it after the medical bills and lawyer fees drained his savings. Amber married a different lawyer 6 months later, someone richer, someone whose mother wasn't dead because of his cruelty. Brandon filed for bankruptcy in February and moved to a studio apartment in Queens, where the walls were thin and the heat barely worked. But Sarah gave birth to a healthy baby girl on a snowy December night, and she named her Eleanor Grace Mitchell. Dr. Eleanor Price became the baby's godmother, held her in the hospital room with tears streaming down her face, and whispered promises about the kind of world they would build together. Sarah went back to nursing school with Dr. Price's scholarship, graduated top of her class, and together they founded the Grace Foundation, providing free prenatal care to women leaving abusive relationships. On Eleanor Grace's first birthday, Sarah sat in her sunny apartment holding her daughter, teaching her to clap her tiny hands together, and she realized something beautiful. She had survived. She had more than survived. She had transformed her pain into purpose, her suffering into service. Brandon had tried to break her by mocking her kindness, but that kindness had saved her. It had connected her to Eleanor. It had given her daughter a godmother who would move mountains for them. It had opened doors she never knew existed. Sometimes late at night, Sarah wondered if Brandon ever understood what he'd lost. Not his mother, though that was tragedy enough. Not his money or his status or his mistress. But the chance to be part of something real, a family built on love instead of cruelty, a life built on character instead of conquest. She hoped he understood. She hoped it haunted him. But mostly, she hoped he learned. Because cruelty always has a price. Always. And sometimes that price is everything.